Welcome, everyone. So excited to be here today with all of you to talk about Spellcasting 101 with Mallory Leone, who's one of my favorite people. And so I'm gonna let Mallory sort of give a brief overview of her background, and then will jump in. So welcome, Mallory.
Thank you. Well, I'm Mallory Leone, and I have been teaching, I've been performing, playing with witchcraft since I was about 10 years old. I lost it for a little while there in my 20s. And then I came back to it when I was coming back to my practice, which was basically just renting books from the library and playing with things and doing little spells to save the bees and and little love potions when I was a kid. When I came back to it, I realized at the time there was this huge influx of manifestation work that was just flooding the internet. And I was looking into that. I was learning a lot more about energy healing in general. I had been a nutritionist in a naturopathic doctor's office for a little while, and realized that a lot of the healing that we were doing in the doctor's office and the healing that I was doing as a nutritionist wasn't really sticking. And I had one client in particular, and I'll never, ever forget it. She was doing her protocol perfectly. She was following every single rule, and she wasn't getting better. And she was really, really sick. And then I talked to her one day and she was like, "I hate my husband." And I was like, oh, there's something else going on here. She was walking, she was getting sunlight, she was getting all the nutrients and everything, but there was something going on an emotional or a spiritual, emotional, psycho-emotional level that just wasn't online. And that's when I started to dive really deep into energy healing and manifestation work, and then realized like, whoa, this is really just witchcraft, or what I had grown up with, that I had called witchery. And my goal at this juncture in my life is not only to help my clients that need the energy healing, the subconscious reprogramming, and all of that good stuff, but to also introduce witchery, because it's like marrying healing with crafts. It's just fun. It's symbolic. It's beautiful. It's ritualistic. And it's incredibly healing. And it's been one of the most beautiful healing modalities of my entire life. So to extract the dogma, to remove a lot of the things that people usually associate with witchery, which comes from all the movies and the books and the horror stories, and really reclaiming the word and reclaiming the practice in a new way, I think has been my life's work for the past, 10 years or so. So that's what I do. My business is called Four Corners Studio. You can see everything I do at fourcorners.studio. And today we're going to be talking specifically about spellcasting, because this is just one of those things that you can buy a book or you can look something up online and you'll get the whole thing, but there are some tricks to making it stick and some tricks to making it work for you and some nuances. So we'll just dive right into the whole thing. And I think by the time you listen to this whole thing, you're going to have a completely different understanding of witchery and its relationship to energy healing and healing in general.
So Mallory, I just want to also mention that to everyone that as she is explaining things, if you have questions, please drop them into the chat and we will be getting to them at the end of her talk. All right.
So I do want to ask, by raise of hands, by something in the chat, if you've ever had any experience with spell work or witchcraft, and that could be reading about it in a book or trying a spell. If you want to put that in the chat, that would be awesome. Just super curious where people are at. Also, any experience with just energy healing in general. Okay, Pat, I see you. Okay, energy healing. Everyone here probably has some experience with energy healing, or even like subconscious reprogramming, hypnotherapy, things like that. So all of that, Reiki master, yes, love it. All of that kind of plays into witchery in the way that I practice it. And huge disclaimer, because I taught a class here in Bend, Oregon in person. And it was the first time I taught live since the pandemic started. And one thing I really like to put out there for everyone is like, if you have experience in this sort of thing, I teach it in a pretty specific way. And I am so open to all of the ways because I don't believe that there is one way to heal. I don't believe there is one way to practice magic or manifest or any of that sort of thing. So this is just the way I do it. And the way that I do it is in a way that I hope empowers you to take what you want, to take what resonates with you and leave the rest. That's how all of this should work. Removing the dogma from healing, I think, is especially important in this day and age. So I'll leave it at that. It's very important to me. It's very important to me that you make this your own, that you experiment, that you make sure it feels good to you. All right, cool. So yes, we love energy medicine, intuitive. Yes, love it. Okay, so what is magic? I'm just going to do a really brief, if you watched my talk in the summit, you've probably heard this a little bit already, so I'll keep this super brief, but I wanted to just put it out there that magic in the way that I teach it, witchery in the way that I teach it is essentially, it's an ancient healing practice. It is a lot of, I think, people that would have been considered witches or sorcerers, magicians, they were probably the healers of the community. They probably had a direct line to spirit, to the goddess, whatever you want to call it, to God. And they would usually use that direct line to help them to heal, whether that was with herbs or with a song or drumming or some sort of spell or potion. And I think of magic as there's all of this energy all around, and we are all on these certain trajectories, and magic will kind of happen to you no matter what. Like you're going through your life. It's just kind of a matter of, are you noticing it? And can you harness the energy, and can you create your own power to sort of help to dictate what's going on, whether that's real tangible things that you're kind of pulling down from the ether, or is it how you approach a situation, process a situation, the perspective that you have when you're moving through your life? So maybe a good example is you get a bill from the IRS and it says, oh, actually, you owe about $4,000 more than you thought you did from 2020. I'm not saying that I got this bill, but I'm not saying that I got this bill. And to me, magic and manifestation, all this sort of thing, no matter what you call it, it isn't about not getting the bill. It's about getting the bill and then figuring out how you're going to use your own energy and power in how you react to it. And I will say that once you sort of harness this power and figure out how to work with it, and working with spells, I have literally had situations where I got another letter in the mail a few weeks later saying, oops, sorry, we were wrong. You don't actually owe the money. So I'm not, and there's no rule book. We're all on our own journey. We're all on our own trajectory, but that's just one example of how I see magic working in our lives. It's like we're playing this game with the energy around us and our own energy and the evolution, the blueprint of our own energetic body. And when we start to do that, the possibilities become really endless. And that's what excites me about this sort of thing. I'm sure going through the summit, researching the things you research, that you realize that kind of anything is possible. It just kind of depends on your, it has a lot to do with the play of energy and your own subconscious programming and figuring out what you really want, that sort of thing. So in that way, I would say magic becomes the healing practice. The healing practice becomes magic. It's kind of one and the same. Spells, I wrote notes. Hold on here. I prepped for this, I promise. So I'm going to go through the anatomy of a spell as I see it. So a spell, so your magic is happening all the time. Magic can happen after a breathwork session. You can feel all that healing moving through you after acupuncture, doing a really good meditation. Maybe you're using plant medicine, whatever. I consider all of that magic. Anything that creates a shift in energy, I think is magical. The spells come in and I think they're so fun because they're like recipes. It's a series of steps that are designed to take you to your intention or your magical goal. So you can think of these like recipes where you can sub different ingredients and you don't, when I first started with magic and specifically with, I sort of practice more of a, I guess, Western European tradition. That's kind of where my ancestors are from. I highly encourage everyone, I think I might've said this on the summit talk, but I encourage everyone to get in touch with your lineage, practice it. There's Muslim magic, there's Egyptian magic, there's African diaspora magic, there's like specifically magic from the American South, Native American, there's everything. Every lineage you can think of, there is a magical or spiritual practice. And so I highly encourage everyone to look into that for themselves. I got really hung up on the steps and the ingredients when I first started this. And then I realized over time that it was way, way more about your intention. So you don't necessarily have to have every single ingredient for a spell. I do spells that don't have any ingredients these days, and we'll do a little bit of a practice one at the end here so we can kind of see what that feels like. But you can sub ingredients. If you think about an ingredient or a recipe that you're making in your kitchen, you have all these ingredients. You might sub some out. Some might stay raw. Some might be cooked or massaged or in some way changed. And with that change, like if you're heating it or if you're chopping it up, what are you doing? You're adding power. You're changing the nature of the ingredients with some sort of power source. So this is where I think a lot of people miss out when they're just using spell books from the library or spell books that you bought at the store, because they give you the steps and they give you the ingredients. And then you're sitting back going like, where is it? Where's my love? Where's the money? And that's usually because when it doesn't come at all, which is rare, and we'll talk about that. But when it doesn't come, it's usually because you forgot the power source, and the power source is just energy. So let me see if I'm missing anything here. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. We're going to get a little bit into intention. Yeah, let's do that next. Okay, so I'm going to talk about intention. Intention is incredibly important if you're going to do a spell at all. So you're getting all these things together, you're doing all these things, you're getting the candles, the herbs, the sparkles, whatever you're doing for your spell. And you're sitting there and you're like, maybe a little confused, or you don't exactly know what your intention is, or you're like, well, I kind of want this thing, but oh man, I want to work less, but then what if this spell works and I lose my job because I asked to work less because I want to be less stressed? So all these things start to come in. So the intention in my mind is the most important part of the spell, because until your whole body, your whole being, your whole self is on board with the intention, you're going to go into the spell feeling a little bit or confused or off. And that can really derail the power and the energy that you're bringing in. So the first thing I would really recommend is getting pretty clear on what you want. And I have a lot of students that will ask like, well, should it just be sort of general abundance, or should it be, I want to make $120,000 a year? And this is kind of where you're going to need to check in with yourself. I cannot tell you. I did a breathwork class last night and the teacher kept saying, I can't breathe for you. I was like, I love that so much. He's like, I can be here, I can hold space, but I cannot breathe for you. And I feel the same way about figuring out intention and figuring out what you want. This is, again, when witchcraft and witchery magic becomes this intense healing process, because I cannot tell you how many students I've had that start with like, well, duh, I just want money. Like, how hard is that? And then we start to really get into it. We start to pick it apart, and it's so much more than that, or it's so much less than that. And so really digging into your intention is really important. If you're just starting out and you're a little bit freaked out that, and this is the other thing, so many people come into this, at least the people that are attracted to my work, it's not that they think it's not going to work. It's that they're scared it's going to. Okay. So what happens if it does work? That's actually scarier to them. I have students that will email me and say, I'm so afraid of my power. And I think that's why I'm in the situation I'm in right now, is because the second I feel my power, I don't know, I've been feeling powerless for so long. I don't understand what's going to happen to me once I start feeling my power. And it's so big, right? To think of what your power could feel like. So I will say that when we're first starting out with spell work, start small, start with little things, manifest a free dinner, not the $120,000 a year paycheck, or I want, 20K months in my business, or I want this perfect partner to walk into my life without me having to do any work on myself. As we all want. Start small, start it's building a trust muscle between yourself and the universe, building a trust muscle between yourself and the God self, the self that you know is so powerful already. And moving slowly. I used to have teachers that would say, you know, if we manifested everything that we wanted all at once, we'd like explode. We'd go insane. We wouldn't be able to really handle it, you know, and that's because of the programming. That's because of the ways that we're reared by our parents and by society. And if you just watch TV, it's like the indoctrination is like constant all the time. And so beginning to release some of those stories and release some of the programming and really figure out, you know, what you want and who you are, and do that by going slow. And I promise you, you will start to build that trust muscle with the magic and with yourself. And then you can start moving up. The biggest mistake I made in my own practice was wanting too big, too soon, too fast without doing the inner work. I don't love the term spiritual bypassing because I have a whole theory on it that I'll try not to get on too much of a tangent. I will just say that I think sometimes it's necessary for people to spiritual bypass. It's part of their journey. And then they kind of wake up from that and they're like, oh, I was kind of bypassing, but sometimes we need it. Okay, that was my tangent. I just would say, like, I wish I would have known to move slower and to build that trust muscle a little bit more readily. So that's intention. When we go through our little spell today, I just kind of encourage you to think of something small. Think of, if you're like, I wish for today to just like feel easy, or like, and we don't really know how that's going to manifest yet, but maybe I feel like a heaviness because work has been stressful, or I'm not really making the money that I feel would keep me safe and keep me feeling secure. And I just kind of wish for that feeling to start to release, something as small as that. I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about this, but tapping into like, what would it feel like if the goal was achieved? That sort of feeling of like, what's the intention under the intention. So tapping into that feeling, that's always really, really helpful too. You can do that with visualizations, different meditations. There's a whole process that you can go through to get really clear on your intention. But for our purposes today, we'll just focus on starting small. So now the actual components of a spell. Okay. So again, we've got our recipe, and we usually will go through the recipe. Can this change? Can we change it? Absolutely. Does it have to be the same every time? Nope, absolutely not. So first and foremost, and some traditions will highlight this a little bit more than others, is protection and creating a sacred boundary. And I really just like this for the ritual of it. It helps me to center myself. It helps me to ground. When we hear the words protection, when we hear the words boundary, I think that our minds can maybe go to a place where it's like, oh, well, that means that scary energy or bad energy can come in. Now, again, this is just my practice and the way that I teach. I don't go there. And not because I'm bypassing, but because personally, I think that most energy, not all, but most energy is pretty neutral. And it's our human selves that give it the emotion, that we put the meaning onto the energy. In the same way when it comes to anxiety. Some people, this isn't everyone, but some people with anxiety, it actually starts in the body. And so it's a sensation in the body. And then their brain is like, oh, this is a sensation. So it gives it meaning. And because it feels negative, it usually gives it a negative meaning. And the same can happen with energy, where I personally believe it's pretty neutral for the most part, like a lot of the time. And then we're just like, oh, that's too much. So it must be bad. It must be evil. So that's all I'll say about that for now. But creating that sacred boundary, you can call in the quarters is what we call it. You can call in your guides, your ancestors for protection, also to help with the magic, because any of those guides, those sacred beings, they can come in and kind of help to guide you and protect the space for you. If you have any like animal guides or anything like that, you would bring in. Another really easy one is just picturing a circle of light. And so I'll just close my eyes, I'll light some candles, I'll burn some herbs, and I'll just picture a light moving around me in a circle, and that's my circle. So we also call it casting a circle. That's part of it. The circle becomes the boundary of protection, but it also becomes this concentrated place of energy. So you can even do this with energy work. I've had energy workers, healers that will create that sacred boundary around them and their client just to make sure that it's contained. And that's where all the magic happens too. So that's kind of fun. Then we have our stated goal. The goal, the target, the focus, the intention, those are all kind of the same thing. I break that down a little bit more in, I have a course called Magic Lab. It's not actually live right now, so you can't even look at it. Sorry. But I can kind of break those down a little bit more depending on how far you want to go into creating your own spell. But essentially, just as a very quick example, and this is a little bit more advanced, so I don't want to overwhelm or confuse anyone. But if my sort of overarching goal might be love or romantic love, and then my target would be like maybe my sacral chakra, because I know that that's where the healing needs to happen in order to bring that in. Like I have an idea in my mind of like, oh, well, there's some trauma there. There's some trauma maybe in the root and the sacral. So that's where I'm going to send my magic. Or maybe I'm heading to vacation in Spain and I can like send my magic there. That's the target. Cause I'm like, ooh, I want to feel super magical and find my love in Ibiza or whatever. And so you can see how like there's the overarching goal, which will help the flavor of the magic, which is the flavor of the energy, which is love. And then you've got your target. So it's a little bit different. We don't always have to do that. It can just be broad. But picturing your target is always really fun because it just makes it kind of like helps the energy get there a little bit faster. Another example I've heard of is now we don't do magic on other people. So that's not what's happening here. You never do magic to bend anyone else's will. However, if my dad was going into surgery, I might send magic to the hospital room, the surgical room. I might send it to the tools that the surgeon is using. I might even send it to the healing hands of the surgeon. And that's not bending his will. It's just making him a little bit more powerful and sending that good energy there. Even that for, some people might feel a little ick. It might feel a little like, I don't even want to go there. But it just kind of depends on where you are in your practice. So then we have our ingredients. Now, ingredients are anything from stones, crystals, herbs. Why don't I have any around me right now? That's embarrassing. Did I say candles? We can also use rattles, drums, anything that can form a rhythm is really cool because the rhythm helps to build energy and power. Music, I just play music on my computer or my phone. It doesn't have to get fancy. People use all sorts of different symbolic tools, things that might symbolize death and rebirth, things that symbolize love, which could be something that's Venusian in nature, like sand or pearls or something like ocean water. I have a beautiful river nearby that is very powerful, and river spirits usually represent or help to bring in love for people or fertility. And so if I was doing a fertility spell or a love spell, I might go just get a little tiny bit of water from the river. And I always ask, so if I'm gathering things in nature, I will usually ask, I don't know, the spirits of the land, like, hey, is it okay that I use some of this? And then I just wait until I feel something either way. I usually don't feel really good about just like ripping branches off and leaves and flowers until I ask. So that's a really good way to do it, to make sure that we're just respecting the land. You can also give back to the land with maybe, I have a friend that cuts off a little piece of her hair and offers it to the land. I have native friends that will, or indigenous friends that will use tobacco. So they'll just sprinkle a little bit of real, not like from a cigarette, like real raw tobacco, or sometimes I'll bring other dried herbs for an offering. So I, always trying to give back in some way. And those ingredients are symbolic, right? They all hold an energy. So yeah, we've all worked with energy here. So we know that the candle is like the earth. So the wax it represents maybe the earth or solid, tangible, earthly things. The fire is transformation and air. We bring in that air for like the movement of thoughts and emotions and feelings. And then maybe we have water there representing, again, emotions or just like the movement, the malleability of life and the change of life. We can bring in things that represent abundance and love. We can bring things in that represent family, photos, or different things that belong to an ancestor. So all of these are our tools that we use. And you just kind of have to go with it. You have to be a little bit intuitive about it. If you don't have a lot of I won't say homeless because I wasn't homeless, but I was without a solid residence for 6 months. And so I had to get really creative, and I didn't want to be lugging around a bunch of stuff. And so I would use things that, I would find outside, and then I could offer it back to the earth, or eggs are a really good one, or food, like working with food, because then you can offer it up on a mantle, on a altar, or you can eat it. So all of these are options. Or you could have no tools at all and just use your energy. Also 100% normal and valid. Then we have the part of the spell where we're raising our power. So I have like maybe 2 hours of content on this in Magic Lab, so I'm going to really distill this down. And it actually is not that hard. It's not that complicated. If everyone just closes their eyes and you take a deep breath, you kind of ground into your body and you kind of just feel for a second. Maybe feeling in your body where there's an amass or an abundance of energy. Right now, I'm kind of feeling it between my chest and my throat. You might feel your hands tingling. You might feel it in your third eye and your tummy. But you can kind of feel, if you really set the intention to feel it, you can feel the energy vibrating throughout your entire body. You can maybe even feel it a couple of feet off of your body in your auric field. Like I'm feeling my hands get kind of hot right now already. So now if we start to just send the energy, and all you have to do is say like, I intend to send the energy to my hands. And then you put your hands together a little bit, almost like you're holding a ball. And you just send your intention there. Even if the intention is just to feel the energy between your hands. You might feel it getting hot or cold. You might feel a tingling. You can kind of move your hands back and forth and see how the energy moves. You can maybe stretch it out or see if you can make different shapes with it. And if you don't feel anything at all, that's fine too. This takes practice. This is all a muscle. With a big deep breath, you can release. And that is your power. That is the energy being gathered for your spell. And there's so many different ways to do it. We can do this physically with dance or movement, with any sort of rhythmic movement. We can do it with music. We can do it with drumming. We can do it with rattles. You can do it with sex. You can do it with solo sex. You can do it with anger and a rise or a bringing up of emotion. That's all that's coming to mind at the moment. But basically using anything that basically generates energy as raising the power. Once you've amassed your power, then you can send it to your intention. Now, this all doesn't have to be like physical. I usually use my hands because I'm a really visual person. And so I'll kind of gather it all up in my hands sometimes and send it to my target. Sometimes when I'm dancing or moving or drumming, it's more of a steady stream of energy going out, that as opposed to like, I'm going to gather it all and then send it all at once. It's more of like a steady stream. That's fine too. Sometimes I'll just sit there with the music going and I'll just be moving like this, like like a back and forth, and I'll just be sitting down and I'll kind of tap in and be like, okay, am I gathering it? Like, what am I doing today? Help me out here. And I'll get sort of a message of like, oh no, this is going to be more of a steady stream as opposed to gathering it all and sending it once. And sorry, my light just went out. And that is the sending power. So that usually happens toward the end of a spell. How long should this last? It's totally up to you. Usually I'll sort of meditate and gather the power to send for anywhere from like 5 to 10 minutes. I've done it for up to an hour. And then where you're sending your energy to. So like we said, we have our goals, like the bigger overarching goals. We'll sometimes have a target. Sometimes the target might be the potion that you're working with. It could be a piece of jewelry that you are putting all of your energy into. And you're saying, when I wear this piece of jewelry, I feel XYZ way. If you're going on a date, you might want to do some sort of magic like that to the clothing that you're wearing, or to a piece of jewelry, or maybe to the perfume you're going to anoint yourself with. And it just kind of helps you to stay confident, stay in your body, stay authentic during the date. That's it. That's magic. So you can send it to tools. You can send it, if I was doing a spell with an egg, let's say, which usually represents abundance and fertility, I would put all of the power into the egg, and then usually you bury it somewhere, but there's other things you can do with it too. You can send all of the power into the photograph of the person that you're healing, usually with their permission, please. So that's kind of where the power goes when you're sending it. Then finishing up the spell, it's a thank you, and it's a releasing of the boundary. So this is pretty important, just as a symbolic closing out of what's happening. So I always say thank you, because I bring in my guides. I bring in any benevolent guides that want to come in and help me out. I can use all the help I can get usually. I release the circle. So that's, again, very symbolic. It's usually very visual, although you can put circles. You can use like salt, you can use flowers, you can use plant matter, sticks, whatever you want to make the circle as well. And I would just release the energy of the circle, clean up. And then after you've released the boundary and given thanks, I usually will touch the ground and just ground. You can go outside, lean up against a tree, because you've just been all up here. You've been all up in the ether. You've been all up in your own energy. And so it's really important to come back. When we don't ground after energy work, things can get a little dicey sometimes, and not in a scary way. I just noticed that when I was doing a ton of client work and I was forgetting to ground, I would usually eat a lot, like way more than I needed, because food is very grounding. I would often get headaches, maybe like backaches, tension headaches. I would have to go to sleep. I would feel really, really tired. And so we just want to kind of close down that crown. I just have like one essential oil that I really love. It is the Medieval Mix by Aura Acacia. And this is just like all of the protection cleansing herbs. It's like rosemary and lemon and lavender and all of them. And I'll just put a couple drops on my hands, and I'll just kind of like put it over my crown, over the back of my neck. There's a lot of energy that can come out back here, as well as obviously the third eye, and just kind of release all of the energy. I disconnect myself from anybody, any other energy out there. And then going outside, having a bite to eat, maybe a bath with some grounding herbs, some cleansing herbs, that can be really helpful as well. And you're done. That's your spell. So I can talk a little bit. Let me see if I'm missing anything here. Boop, boop, boop.
I would love for us to, while you're looking at that, I would love to do an actual practical example. So if somebody has something that they would like Mallory to walk through, if you have a specific goal intention that you would like some assistance on walking through a spell, drop it into the chat or raise your hand. And if not, we'll just keep on going.
Do you have one, Darcy, if no one else does?
Oh my gosh. You know, the one that I love spell. Joe wants a love spell. I was going to say, you did a terrific love spell in the summit. I'm not sure how many people heard it. So that's always a good one. Yeah,
Yes.
romantic love.
Oh,
That's the kind
yes.
of love. She got specific. Romantic.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay,
Yeah.
so the groundwork for a romantic love spell is making sure that that's what you actually want. And so all of these are going to really be the inner work first. So I would, how I'm thinking about it right now, because I'm in the same boat, is for myself, I will start with some self-love spells and just make sure that that my energy and my intention is clear, and that I'm not like listening to my friends that are like worried about me because I'm alone all the time, or society saying that I should have a partner, or that I should just have one partner, or that like my partner should look a certain way or be a certain way. So first, getting super, super clear. And I think what I mentioned in the summit might have been the 3 lists. Was that okay?
You mentioned where the candles, where you move them closer.
Oh,
That's the one.
okay. There's another one where I write 3 lists. The first list, because, we all think of love in pretty specific ways sometimes. And it's usually, and this is no shade, like I'm in the same boat. We usually kind of think of like who this person is going to be for us, how they're going to be, how they're going to be a mirror for us. And that's kind of where it ends. Like a lot of the people that I talk to will be like, well, I want my partner to be this and this and this and this. Okay, cool. Well, how are you going to show up? How do you want to show up? And so the first list is what you want in a partner, because that's just fun. And I just list everything, like from hair color to the kind of healing they've done on themselves to what kind of family they could, like, just have fun with it. This is where you get to use your imagination, and imagination is magic. That's where it all starts. Then the second list is what I want to bring to the table. Realistically, I like my alone time. I don't want someone who's going to want a lot of my time. I say that I'm active and that I want to do active things, but do I really want to like go skiing every weekend, or like not really? Like, let's be real. So they have to be fiercely independent. And so just everything that you want to bring to the table. Are you more nurturing, or do you want someone who's going to serve you? I mean, that's valid. If you want someone to worship you, like, put that down. It's not wrong to have these desires. Just put them down. And then the third list is what you want the actual relationship, the chemistry, the alchemy, the feeling of the actual relationship of both of you to be, which is a totally separate list, because we all bring our own energies. They have their energies. And then you have the alchemical reaction of your energies together, which forms the relationship. Those are 3 very different things. And, ask any therapist that understands codependency. This is a good way of thinking about it. And so once you have all your lists, then you can really get started on the love magic. And because this talk is more about sort of forming your own spell from scratch, I would just encourage you, once you have your lists written and you've really meditated on this, to start to bring in the things for your altar and your spell space that feel really right to you, that feel good to you. And so for me, that might be a lot of fire and pinks and reds and like maybe some sexy things, because that's just how I like my relationships. I like them to be a little spicy. Whereas you might be feeling like, no. We're going to bring in some chamomile tea, and we're going to bring in all pinks and maybe some blue for healing. And then we're going to bring in some mala beads, because we want to meditate together. We want this to be a spiritual partnership. Pictures that you cut out of magazines of you guys like kayaking together or whatever. Like all of these will be symbolic of what you're trying to create, the energy that you're trying to form, and then really tapping in and feeling. Okay, so I did breath work last night, and it was the wildest thing. I got this vision of myself as a toddler, and it was like this very specific time in summer where I grew up, where the sun was at a very specific point in the sky coming down, and I was at the park with my dad. And it was just like pure love. Now, kind of weird to mention my dad in a spell about romance, but that's the feeling I want with everybody in my life, like not just with my romantic partner, but that feeling of the sun almost setting in summer and the warm air, and we're outside and the smells of the trees and the grass, like that's it. That's all I want in life. And so do that, get in touch with that, And then every time you sit down to meditate, or when you sit down for your spell, you've got that feeling intact of like how you actually want to feel. Super, super powerful. Now, again, with love, I just want to make it clear, we're not doing a spell on a specific person. If you have a person in mind, or if you have an existing partner, then we're just kind of working a little bit more of the energies of like maybe compatibility, or, you bring in that specific love feeling, and just kind of making sure we're not like putting that on another person, because that can really backfire. I've seen it backfire. I've also seen it work, and then it just works for it, like prolongs the inevitable, right? So if that relationship isn't supposed to be, hey, I'll just say it. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I've done spells on people. Don't do it. Don't do it. And they weren't malevolent at all. They were love spells, and I got what I wanted, but inevitably every single time you're really just prolonging the inevitable. So it's just kind of a waste of everybody's time. Love is essentially about healing. It's about becoming, feeling worthy, embodying your worthiness. And so anything you can bring in for your spell for that would be really beautiful.
Hey, Mallory.
Yeah.
I'm thinking as you were sharing that the word slow came in again, because I think with love spells, we're like, we want it now. But you said really looking at that self-love and that self-worth piece first, and slowly moving into.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes dating is a part of that, and like experimenting is a part of it. This is probably a really good time to mention that your spells will bring things in ways you will not expect. So and I forgot to mention the most important part of spell work, it's surrender and letting go. I don't know how I didn't write that down. This is a little bit interesting to like teach, because it really is experiential, right? Like anyone that is working on self-love, self-work, healing, all of that sort of thing, we eventually kind of get to this point where we're like, oh, we have to surrender. Oh, we're trying to control everything. You might think looking at spells that it's all about control, because you're just like, you're meticulously planning and you want this specific thing, when really it's about surrender. It's about putting the energy in motion and then stepping back and being like, okay, I trust that this is going to happen for me. So that's huge when it comes to all kinds of magic. And that kind of rounds back to what you said, Darcy, of like, it could happen slowly. It could happen quickly. It could bring in people or experiences onto your path that are just meant as maybe like an experience that will then take you to the ultimate goal. So if you do a spell for love or romantic love, and it brings in someone who was maybe like a test or a challenge, or like wasn't exactly what you expected, you can be like, well, this sucks. Like this didn't work, when really that was just a little pebble that you had to get over to get to the ultimate goal. And so trust is a real, and then listening to yourself and not just being like, oh, well, this is the first person that came in after my spell, so I'm going to stick with this. Not what I'm suggesting at all. It's more just like, I do believe that magic can sort of speed up the inevitable. But in general, you're just focusing on like one path that's already there for you, one timeline, one energetic signature that's already there. You're just kind of like hopping on the track when we have all these other tracks that we could hop on.
That's so great. We had another one come in that was more health related, and I'd love for you to talk about that. Specifically, the question was about thyroid health.
Okay.
So anything you can share about spellcasting around.
Okay. So the first thing that comes to mind, and I want to call out all health related challenges, is we want to get away from it because it hurts and it's painful and it's uncomfortable. It's expensive. It's all of these things. And this might sound a little bit triggering because I know it was for me at first, but it's almost like sometimes the healing can start with accepting what's happening. And that doesn't mean we don't do anything about it. But I just wanted to put that out there as something that I've been doing for healing a lot lately is I have sort of like the picture of my mental screen. That's what we'll call it, mental screen. And on one side of the screen, I picture my current state. So if that's, you know, hormone imbalance or thyroid dysfunction, maybe something's really painful, like my knee is hurts or whatever it is. And I just sit with that for a little while, however long it takes. Maybe it's a couple minutes, maybe it's a couple seconds. And I really sit with it and I really feel it. And I just say, this is where we're at. This is where we're at right now. And then what I'll start to do is I'll start to dissolve that image. And not in a way like, oh, get rid of it, it's bad, but just like, hey, we're ready to move to a different timeline. And then I start to bring up the image of me as healthy and vibrant and with lots of energy. And this is all in preparation for the spell, by the way, because I do think it's so important to not think of spell work as like a quick fix that will just let us bypass and get away from everything that's painful. It's because it's self-work, because it's self-healing, there is always that element of leaning into the pain a little bit. I mean, that's shadow work too, right? Is like that acceptance of where we are in this moment. And it's so much harder to get over things, especially that feel, like so, like we can't even concentrate on anything else because it's so much. So so for me, this is just a huge part of my magic, especially when it comes to healing the physical body. And so moving over to that visualization of your healthy self, once you've accepted where you're at, then we're starting to feel into, okay, this is what it would feel like if I wasn't in pain. This is what it would feel like if I didn't feel like I had to sleep all the time, et cetera, et cetera. And you can see what you're wearing. You can see what your hair would look like, what your skin looks like, maybe picture what you would be doing. And so then there's your intention. That's kind of where you're starting, is with that visualization, with the full acceptance and love of where you are right now with your health. And then for the actual spell, let me think. I think like teas would be a really good one. Doing blessings and rituals around certain, even like your medication. I know that sounds crazy. But like, it's part of the acceptance. It's part of the bringing the energy to it, being like, thank you, thyroid meds. Like, you help me function. Thank you so much for being here right now for me. And then maybe doing like a little energy healing potion on your teas, working maybe with an herbalist to help you with any sort of teas that are good for the thyroid. I know that like blue butterfly, I'm getting this wrong. There's like this one herb called butterfly. Help me out here, people. It's this beautiful blue tea. It's so pretty. And it is really, it's like full of antioxidants. I'm pretty sure there's no contraindication, so you'd be fine with it. And so like blue things are really going to be really good for the throat chakra meditations, releasing any energy. Butterfly pea. Thank you, Julia. It's such a fun one to work with. It doesn't really taste like anything to me, but it's this beautiful blue color. Working with blue stones, tuning into anywhere. So oftentimes too, like we'll go like straight to the thyroid, but in energy work and in the healing that the modalities that I've learned, and when working on clients with energy healing, I'll be like, oh, weird. All of this is in your freaking sacral. Like, this is where we need to heal this sacral first. And then we start to heal the sacral, and then it starts to like, things start to kind of flow a little bit better. And then maybe we get more information about what's going on with the other stuff that seems to be the main symptom, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. You should say that, because I'm a biofield tuning practitioner as well. So I'm learning all of that, and it is true that different chakras can come up. You go to the lowest, and 9 times out of 10, when you retest at the end, the other issues are also released from whatever the base chakra that needed support is worked on. So yes, it's good stuff.
And I love that so much. And like, reaching out to your community for support, trading energy healing sessions is so good. with people in your life that might be able to do that for you. I just want to put it out there because I had a migraine for like 5 days last week around the new moon, which was super fun. And every day I would wake up and I would be reminded, because I've had a lot of health issues in the past. I was like, oh yeah, it's so hard to even think about doing magic or like doing healing or sitting down and meditating when you're in pain. So I just want to like put that out there, that that's hard. When you're not feeling good, it's really hard to be like, oh, I'm going to sit here and figure out my intention. And then I'm going to like figure out this whole spell. And so just reaching out for support is so important, and knowing like you're not doing anything wrong if you're in pain and you can't quite like get the energy to do this stuff. Spell work takes a ton of energy. I actually rarely do spell work anymore because it takes so much of my energy. I'll do it like maybe once a month.
Wow. Does anybody have any other questions as we are wrapping up? It is such a pleasure to have Mallory here. So if you do have specific questions, take advantage. I also want to have you share a little bit about the work that you do, how people can potentially work with you. I know you do individual work and you do group classes. Magic Lab isn't on right at this moment, which makes me sad,
right.
but yes. Share it all with us.
It's coming back very soon, and it's coming back at a very, in a very accessible way, which is very important to my heart. I right now am doing one-on-one work. I have pretty limited availability, usually only on Wednesdays and Fridays. I can do like 1 or 2. And then sometimes under rare circumstances, I can do a couple of weekends. But my energy healing sessions, I am a Reiki master, but I don't really use the Reiki energy anymore. I sort of channel more of like my ancestral lineage kind of practices. I do vocal toning. Everything's done remotely over Zoom for now. And then it's like, I'll bring in a little bit of intuitive stuff, maybe some cards. And then I do a full card reading, which is not tarot. It's actually called the Cards of Life. And it's based in a tradition that was started by the Order of the Magi, and it uses your birthday. So a little bit of numerology, a little bit of astrology, and it's just kind of like wildly accurate. So I keep offering those. So you can go to fourcorners.studio in the work with me section. That's kind of my main thing right now. I don't know if I have any courses that are like up and live. There's one on ritual that's like $11. I have some meditations that you can get for, they're like $3. So if you wanted to try any of that, you're more than welcome. And I'm seeing a couple of quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, beautiful. So for graduate school, manifesting the perfect programmer career. Okay, so this one I would probably do a spell or look for a practice that is over the span of maybe even like a full moon cycle, which is about 28 to 30 days, right? The reason being is when we're looking for something as big as this, it's sort of like purpose. And like these are big questions that are going to impact our lives for a little while. And so the best way to start to get in touch with that is start to create a conversation with your higher self, with your guides, that's a little bit more ongoing. And so I would maybe start like a daily ritual, whether it's in the morning or the evening, and light a candle, start to free write. If you don't know what free writing is, it's sort of a channeling practice. And what this is going to do, so you kind of go into a little tiny bit of a meditative state. You can just do some couple of deep breaths and get really, really relaxed. And then I use my computer, which is not usually recommended, but I can just type faster than I can write. But you can also just get a pen and you close your eyes and you just let your hand write. And this is sort of getting more into the subconscious. I've noticed with stuff like grad school, career, trade school, should I be a massage therapist or a hypnotherapist, that our brains really get in the way. So another thing that comes to mind is working with Mercury, working with Jupiter. This is like opening up a whole new ball of wax here. That wasn't the right, whatever. It's opening up a whole new Pandora's box, but working with different energies that can help to kind of solidify things for you and bring things in. Jupiter has a lot to do with expansion, with career, abundance, things like that. Mercury is the god of communication, technology, the intellect, things like that. So maybe with grad school, like bringing in some Mercury symbology into your altar and stuff like that could be super helpful. Because right now it's about tapping into higher self, getting underneath all that subconscious programming and kind of figuring out what you really want to be doing as opposed to what you think you should be doing.
And I'm going to say this is not just at graduate school, like as a super grown up, you can do, I'm like, oh, this sounds good. So, you know, we can all take a lunar cycle and do this work.
Yes.
And like, get out there for everyone.
That's such a good point. I mean, I feel like I know what my passions are. But I tell people all the time, this journey ain't done until it is done. Like we're never done. We're never there. You'll never get there. And instead of letting that be, frustrating, let that be awesome. We get to keep being here and it's all a miracle. Partner's daughter, desperately wants to conceive by IVF. Okay. Let me just quickly, how much time do we have? 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, so you're asking the question, and I would ask, so it's like, it's kind of hard. You can do magic for people. I would say that it would be great for her to like start working with energy. Absolutely. For you, I would ask her permission to put her and her partner's photo maybe on your altar, asking permission to just send, let me see, maybe like you can ask if you can do a fertility spell for her. You can ask if you can put her on your altar. And then I would probably, I'm kind of seeing more of like sending her more of like a general abundance, like energy, maybe picturing a color that you associate with her and her healing and her abundance and her fertility. I was at first seeing blue and then I saw pink. That has nothing to do with gender. Those are just different colors that heal in different frequencies. She's partnerless and doing it on her own, even easier. So we're only working with one person. So yes, I would ask her permission to be able to just like, you can call it praying, meditating, sending her love, sending her energy. So that's something you can do. You can ask if you can do a fertility spell for her. I did one for a friend once where, those friendship bracelets that we used to make when we were kids with the string. So I chanted into it. So another thing, my auntie is actually Catholic. And so it's funny because I'm like, I'm a witch. But she prays into her knitting. And I was like, oh, that's totally a spell. And so that's another thing you can do is like chant a mantra, like a fertility mantra, maybe using like a Lakshmi mantra, which is the goddess of abundance and fertility and all of that. And make her like a little blanket that she can put on her bed. There are so many different options for things like that. And then just asking her permission that you do that and that you're sending that energy to her. And then getting her involved. I think energy work is just so beautiful for making space for new life. Breath work. Oh my gosh, if she can do like a breath work class, oh, it's so good. It's like doing psychedelic drugs, but non-psychoactive, and you can get out of it anytime you want. Okay, so for the colors, Linda, my first go-to always is to tune into what you think it means. I have a client that she cannot actually visualize. Like I can close my eyes and like, I'm in Italy or I'm on the beach. Like I can see things and she just can't, she only sees colors. So she's like, okay, well, what does magenta mean? And I'm like, I don't know. What does it mean to you? So really starting, and you can start small and just tap in and just ask. If you don't hear anything, if you don't sense anything in particular, that's totally fine. I just look it up on the internet and I see what resonates with me. There is no shame in that game. I do that with animals all the time. Like I got stung by a bee once and I was like, what does that mean? And it turned out that it was like crazy spot on what it means in the shamanic community. So just look it up. You're not like, It's fine. You can just look it up. And I'll usually just Google like color, energy healing, or magic or whatever. Oh, yes.
I just put, Sachin Patel had given us a really powerful breath work to the folks that joined us for the summit. So the link is in here to
Beautiful.
that. I think it's like an hour and a half long. It's really lovely.
It's so good.
You're like, I'm down, I'm going in now.
Seriously.
Yeah. So we're at the top, at the bottom of the hour, the top of the next hour. Really, really appreciate this, Mallory. I know I feel like I have the rules and then the unrules, right? Like the place where we're supposed to sit and make it our own. So really appreciate your time today. And it's fourcorners.studio, correct?
Yes. And please, everyone, feel free to reach out, email me at hello. I keep drinking the tea and then burping. hello@fourcorners.studio. Just any questions you have about this. I'm so happy to have a conversation with you. There's on my site too, I think I charge for it. It's like an introductory call, but then I take the money off if you end up booking with me. But if you just want to have like a quick chat about this, just reach out via email and I'll send you a separate link.
All right.
Thanks,
Well,
Julia.
yeah, sending you so much love today, Mallory. This has been such a gift. And thank you everyone who is joining us live and watching the replay.
Yes,
have a great day.
Bye guys.